we talk about manifestation. And know that it's not just individual, it's collective. And we begin today with a simple, transformative truth that manifestation is not about getting what we want. It's about becoming aligned with what is true and living that. As we take one more breath together and settle into this time, we'll start with the reading of today's daily word, which is life. With joy, we dance in the fountain of life. Observing children playing in a fountain, we hear them laughing as they dart through sprays of water, surprised by sudden geysers. Sunlight turns the wafting mist into prisms of color, a reminder that the same joy and light dance within each of us. Life can feel like that fountain, fun, but sometimes catching us by surprise. And if we resist, we grow weary. But when we move with its rhythm, dodging, laughing, and dancing, we feel the pulse of divine life. Even in challenging circumstances, we can regard the spray as refreshment, the soaking as grace. Each of these baptisms becomes an invitation to cleansing, renewal, and awakening, a chance to grow in spirit. And as we join life's dance, we are lifted creatively, and creativity awakens, joy abounds, and we feel fully alive. Psalm 36:9 says, For with you is the fountain of life. In your light, we see light. So with joy, we dance in the fountain of life. And so it is. And I'm going to start with a few little passages. This is one of them. Get us into the discussion on manifestation. So in Galatians 6:7 it says, whatever one sows, he will also reap. And I know there's your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, everything that we are is a seed. But, it's also recognizing that life and seeds don't just randomly happen. They respond to the world around you through patterns that we plant and that we nurture. Charles Fillmore said thoughts are seeds. And seeds need all kinds of things to grow. They need all kinds of light and the right kind of soil. And James 2:17 says faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. If we're not watering our seeds, nothing's going to grow. So Charles Fillmore taught that faith must be lived to be effective. Our seeds need extra nourishment from us to be effective. But faith isn't hoping or waiting or wishing. It's actually movement in our own truth for what is happening. So we're always planting seeds. Galatians 6:7 says, whatever one sows, that's what he'll also reap. But we don't sow the seed and then automatically get a whole bunch of strawberries. We have to have certain conditions. We have to have certain environments. We need to move ourselves in both humility but also responsibility. Because our responsibility and our identity in the universe actually matters for seeds to grow. Proverbs 23:7 says he thinks in his heart, so he is. It's what we are on the inside. It's not just our mind saying, this is what I think should happen, this is what I want. It's our heart moving us into right action and alignment with those thoughts. In Matthew 6:33 says, seek first the kingdom. But the kingdom isn't a place. It really is alignment and presence with those seeds. It's our integrity. It's reorganizing ourselves so that our head and our heart align. I recently had a conversation with a young lady who didn't understand why things were happening around her, because she had read everything she needed to about manifestation and wanted to know why it wasn't working. So many of us were introduced to manifestation in much the same way as this young lady was, where she's told that your thoughts create your reality, or you visualize it and it will come, or ask and then believe and then receive. I remember, going back 25, 30 years. I am getting old, Carol. When I first heard stuff about manifestation, I created this big poster, put it up in my kitchen with all the pictures of stuff that I was going to manifest into my life. And it's not what it is at all. Manifestation is not your wish board. And for a while, though, that felt empowering. It felt really empowering for me to put all those pictures up, put it in the kitchen, and to look at it every day. Think positively, and then all this stuff will fall into place. You visualize, and life is still life. It still brings challenges. You could think you're doing everything right, and the outcomes don't match the expectations. So, just like this young lady, we say things like, what are we doing wrong? Is something wrong with us that we're not doing it right? And that question comes from a misunderstanding of what thoughts or seeds really means. So we're not in failure, but we might be in ignorance. Because the think and it becomes, if that were really happening, then there wouldn't be any hunger. Children wouldn't be suffering. Violence wouldn't exist, especially towards the vulnerable. The think and it will come. I'm sure, mothers are not in places where there's hardly any food, not manifesting properly. That's not what's happening. So, instead of blaming individuals for their own realities, start to recognize that realities are shaped by very, very complex systems. Our histories, our collective conditions that we are in that are not of any of our doing. To move beyond the isolation of I just need to think the right way and things will happen. Ken Wilber is a philosopher, and his quote is, everybody is right, but only partially. We all have a tiny bit of the truth of what's going on. Thoughts do matter, but that's an incomplete when we're dealing with manifestation. It's not just mental, it's integral. It includes our inner world, our thoughts, our beliefs, our reactions. It includes our bodies, our nervous systems, our habits, what we're genetically just in a disposition of, our actions and our choices, our relationships, what's going on around us and with our friends, our family, our community. It's our cultures, our actual earthly environment, the structures that we are in our communities, in our cities, towns, So again, this is a quote from Ken Wilber. He says, transformation happens when we include more of reality, not less of it. When we're willing to look at the whole picture as best as we can. So it's actually about participation, not just thinking or wishing or doing something that we believe is proper. Its manifestation is actually the expression of our level of being. All of it together, all of our thoughts, all of our actions, all of our participation in life. So we don't manifest what we want, we tend to manifest what we're practicing, what we're practiced at being, and what we're recognizing and willing to be aware of in the life around us. So our identity matters. Our willingness to grow matters. Our willingness to do everyday practices matters. So each day, maybe we choose a quality. Maybe it's peace or courage or love or patience or something. And then we take time to notice without judgment how those things are working in our lives. And then maybe we take one little action. It doesn't have to be big. To just move ourselves more into an alignment of what we are feeling and noticing about whatever quality we're choosing. We remember that manifestation is relational. It's not all on our own. So we show up in the places that we can, the places that we're called to, and we take time for reflection. So in that reflection, we would just take a few minutes now for meditation on this. You just settle in any way that's best for you to settle in today. And bring your awareness inward. And asking our hearts, what quality is ready to live through me? Allow yourself to feel it. Now imagine your day. Imagine yourself speaking from this quality. Imagine yourself acting from this quality. Imagine yourself responding from this quality. And then to your heart again, what is one simple step that I can take today? And breathe with that. And take a nice big breath. Allow yourself to return. On the screen, you'll see the practice. It's choosing quality, peace, courage, compassion, patience, whatever it is. Notice your patterns without judgment. Take one aligned action, small, real, something that you can actually say, oh, I did that. We show up for others. And we reflect on that and grow from it. These are the seeds, and we are fertilizing them with this practice. I'm going to pause here for anybody who would like to discuss. Here's some questions. I'm going to read each of them to just rattle around. It might spur something you wish to share with each other in this time for reflection and discussion. It's where in my life am I trying to control outcomes rather than aligning my way of being and my actions? What patterns, thoughts, emotions, or reactions do I notice repeating in my life? And what might they be planting? How can I participate more consciously in creating a world of compassion and cooperation, not just for myself, but for others? And what quality, such as peace, courage, or love, is asking to be expressed through me right now? And what is one real action I can take to embody it? Again, if you're online and you'd like to share, you just need to unmute. Anything? So at the heart of all of this is to not to deny any suffering that we're having, but how maybe to transform it, to meet it, to remember that manifestation is not about controlling or avoiding difficulty or blaming ourselves or others or thinking we're not doing it right because something happens in our life that is life. I know in reflecting on some of this and reflecting on what the young lady that asked me about this, when Dean was sick, when my husband was sick, there were several people that tried to tell him that he wasn't thinking properly to remove the illness from him, that he had to, think a different way or make sure he visualized a certain thing And then I read a couple of books soon after he passed, because that just weighed on me, that was the thinking. And it turns out that that's like pretty prevalent with a lot of groups, because there were quite, there was a book called, it was the first Ken Wilber book I read. It was about him and his cancer walk with his wife. And similar thing happened, where there were a lot of people like, well, you just need to do this or do that, and it's all in your brain, but it's not. And how hard that is on people that are sick if they're getting that message, because then they think that they're not doing things properly and that they failed somehow, which is far from the truth. Sometimes life is just life. And how do we participate in that with each other?
Okay.
You want to, if you come up to the microphone, then people online can hear you.
Okay. So, I'm thinking about what you just said, and saying, depends on what you're thinking, you're not thinking positive enough, you're not visualizing wellness or whatever. And, yeah, or And I remember when we first started a prayer group and prayer chaplains here at the church. And so occasionally you might need to pray one-on-one with someone. And the matter of the fact is, we don't know the total perfect answer. And so when we pray for someone, or even ourselves, we don't necessarily know the right answer. I mean, we might think that this is the way we're supposed to go, or this is what has to be done, or we have a goal in mind. But to unravel my need to learn, to understand, to surrender, to do all the things for that oneness, it's totally, you put the request out, and then you just sit and wait and find peace and harmony and allow things to come your way. And yes, I know so many wonderful people that came down with a disease, and they did, and they visualized, and they did everything to try to change the outcome of that particular movement in their body. And it didn't happen. But what did happen, because they were able to talk about it, there was a total inner peace in surrendering to something higher than themselves and being in this space, because technically we don't end here. It's just our physical form seems to go away. And we're more than that. And we're also here for anyone that's involved in your life. There's something about me being here, and then when my time comes to leave, all those who have some connection to me some way or another, they each have their own lesson, and in the merging back to the oneness of God. And we can't get into individual heads and say, this is the thing, this is the right thing for you, this, do this, do that. No, the only one that I can 100% affect is me and my ability to surrender and love all that exists around me, and allow them to go through their particular path the way they need to go and what they need to learn. And hopefully I might be able to be the person that might say the right word, but we never know. We never know when we say the actual right thing for another individual that just hits them and say, I understand now. And that's a wonderful gift when you get for yourself that moment where you say, I understand now. And then you just keep going forward, because there's going to be something else that you're going to have to learn. So it's an ongoing process. So it's great to be alive, and it's great to be young, and it's great to be old, because the lesson as you're in those stages of life it's always something for each of us to learn as an individual, and then allow it to glow out. So there's a healing. It's not like you have to talk it. You can just, you're feeling it and you be it. So that's all I can say.
With some affirmations for today, and say them silently to yourself or out loud and repeating. I align with my inner world with truth and compassion. I align with my inner world with truth and compassion. I participate in life with awareness and responsibility. I participate in life with awareness and responsibility. I embody the change I wish to see. I embody the change I wish to see. I act with courage and care in the world. I act with courage and care in the world. I am a living expression of love in action. I am a living expression of love in action. And you can take these with you coming up into the week. We've come to a moment of gratitude. And in the spirit of our topic of the day, it's a reminder that manifestation is not accumulation, it is circulation. And our giving is part of manifestation, creating a world that reflects care and connection. And together we say, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all I have, all I give, and all I receive. We are grateful. And those of you that are in the building, don't forget to pick up your affirmation as you come forward. In closing, we are aligned with truth, living with awareness, acting with compassion, and participating in the unfolding of a more loving world. If you would affirm with me, I am light, I am love, I am power, I am presence, I am mind, I am life, I am peace, I am joy, I am strength, I am beauty, and wherever I am, God is, and all is well. So may you all walk with the awareness of what you are embodying each and every day. May you all act with courage in the face of what is real, and may you hold compassion for yourselves and for others, as we remember that manifestation is not about controlling life. It's about participating in its healing, its growth, and its unfolding. And so it is.